Hello and welcome to another Fresh Off the Stalls. Now I've been tonight to see Bat Boy the musical, not to be confused with Batty Boy the musical, because that would be highly offensive. Oh, bit of fluff. This, on the other hand, is, I think in my tweet I described it as Barmy and bodacious. Now I know I'm doing this from home again, but the weather, I couldn't find anywhere outside. The weather's really terrible right now, and I don't think I can put you lot through any more motion sickness trying to hold this damn camera out in front of me. So I thought I'd do it from home. In doing it from home I thought, what can I find that's bat related that would make this whole sort of shtick moment even more drawn out and irritating. I couldn't find anything bat related. This is the closest I could get because it has wings. So I suppose Bat Boyo, it didn't fly. Anyway, what did fly on the other hand is the musical. So Bat Boy is a sort of cult musical in many respects, and it has a large following. Not something that I'd ever seen before tonight, but was well aware of its reputation and the love for the musical. It's American, if I was to describe it. It's madcap and modern embrace of the usual sort of monster movie format. There is an abomination. It tries to be human. That doesn't quite work out because people are dicks. So that's what it is. It's actually inspired by a real life article about an actual Bat Boy found in a cave in the US, and Keith. I think that's how Keith, K-E-Y-T-H-E, Keith Farley, Brian Fleming, and Lawrence O'Keefe, spelled differently, decided, let's write a musical about this. And it's great. So let's just get down to it, because enough with the awkward introduction. It's nuts. It really is completely off the hinges. Because of that, it's a bit difficult to get into, because half the time I was sitting there going like, what is going on? This is absolutely mad. But you really warm to it. The writing itself is very witty, very scathing of small town American sensibilities. And it's very energetic. It's very over the top. And it really is a lot of fun. There are moments where it resorts to sex jokes a little too often. I think that actually belies some of the wit and intelligence that actually comes through in the lyrics, but that might just be me being an old prude and not getting enough myself. Nothing really wrong with sex jokes. I just think that I think some of the stuff elsewhere, I think you could actually got plumbed for something a bit more higher, but nah, that's just me being boring and grumpy and pretentious. I think that's my... Oh, and the only other thing is, like, when things go... Towards the end, when thing goes inevitably a bit Wagnerian, that's when it loses its pace and its humour. And it's a bit of a shame. But elsewhere, it's really bubbly, it's really surreal, and it's actually a lot of fun, the musical itself. So I really enjoyed it, and it's, despite the small faults it has, I can understand why it's garnered such a following and such a reputation. Cast-wise, I think the show's got a great cast on board. Lauren Ward as Meredith Parker, though, completely steals the entire show. She is just a wonderfully exuberant comic character, everything through her personification, through to her physicality. She does almost a comic book character without ever making it feel over the top or two-dimensional. And she's got a great voice. She really treats her songs really nicely, really tenderly at points as well, which is something you don't quite expect for something which is as in your face as it is. Also, playing the named character Bat Boy, Rob Compton is really good. He's brilliantly physical, especially in the first half and the first portion of the show. A very, very physical and visceral actor in his sort of bat-like portrayals, but I really loved his growth into the sort of very learned gentleman with a very, very striking British accent, and there's a joke about that, but I won't give it away. Yeah, it's a really good cast on board as well. I really also liked Simon Bailey as Reverend Hightower, that sort of very, very flamboyant TV evangelist. I think he got the satirical portrayal of that right down to key. Right down to Keith, that's not even a saying. Got the portrayal of the satirical portrayal of the character. I think he hit it right on the head. Production. Now, this is where I'm getting a bit grumpy. Production in general is okay. I like the direction. I think the direction really brings out the comedy latent in the actual material itself. It also plays a lot with bits of the production, like with Barbie dolls being flown in from the scenery, and sort of very knowingly sort of plays around with that. And the scenes. So choreography, great. It's a really sort of a grotesque vaudeville at points, and I really loved it. Things about the production I hated. Sound levels. I always say this a bit tentatively when I come to talk about things at the Southwark Playhouse, because I know the Southwark Playhouse is a bastard of an acoustic to do things in. It's basically this giant breeze block space that they built a giant cloth tent in. It's just like nothing goes. So when you're amping things up, it's even more difficult because the sound dies almost as soon as it leaves the speakers. There's no resonance. I can imagine that everything through the cans, and I've said this about Dogfight, I imagine everything on the cans sounds fine, but it just comes out so differently. The main issue with the levels here is that at points the music is just too loud and you can't hear the cast. And you can't hear the diction from the cast. And there's moments in chorus numbers where it's just a mumble of sounds that comes through. The music's too loud and you can't hear what's actually being sung. And I just think that needs to be sorted. It's not impossible. And I totally understand the real challenge it is to get sound balance right in this venue. But it really does need to be sorted, because it really does. It's at points where I'm just like, what's going on? I can't hear anything. The music's really loud. Again, I just think I'm getting old. But yeah, you just lose that, and when you lose the diction and the actual sound of the singing, you lose the lyrics. And there is some really great, lovely little witticisms and jokes in the actual lyrics themselves, and they need to come through. And then now on to my biggest gripe of all: the video projections. Now this is a bit of a pet hate, so I'm probably going to be meaner about it than possibly some other people will. So for me, video projection in any show should always be used to enhance what's already on stage. It should never, in my opinion, be used in lieu of set. Now, unfortunately, for the majority of the production, the video projections here is used in lieu of set. And I'm going to be very harsh and come out of it. It's lazy. There are moments where the video projection is appropriate in this. There's a wonderful bit where, with the flashback, they do it on the screen as a sort of an old home movie. That worked fine. That was appropriate. That added to the show. There's also one bit in the Mother Nature scene where it was used for sex jokes, but they were good sex jokes. So I'm not going to complain about that too much. Those are the 2 points where the video screens that we used. Fine. I didn't object to that. But when you're sitting there and it's supposed to be the living room of a house, and because the stage is set on 2 tiers, so you got the lower tier, which is on the ground, that is where the action's happening, and then you got the upper tier, which isn't being used, but it's projected on this really cheap-looking, cartoony sort of like, oh, it's a house. I know it's a house. The direction and the action and the props and sets are used on the low level suggest that it's a house. I don't need that visual, and sometimes, because the cast and the direction on the ground level is working so well, it actually distracts from what's going on, and that to me is a huge gripe. As I said, I'll just come out with it. I think it's lazy. There's also bits where it just looks really crap. The opening scene where it's a kind of pastiche of Star Wars would have been funny if I could actually read the words that are on the screen. Where there's a bit of murder and rampage, it all goes a bit sort of psychedelic, and it doesn't add anything, especially when it's being projected onto some of the characters. It looks weird. That's my biggest gripe in the whole thing, and I will stand by what I put in my tweet, in that, at points the production really lets the material and the cast down. There's also some other little niggles, like, especially in the first half, there's a lot of floor work, especially with Rob Compton being Batboy. Like, going around on the floor. If you're not in the front row, you're not going to see it. And I think that's a bad directional decision to do so much floor work without actually properly checking sight lines of the venue. Sorry, I'm going to be outright and say that. So, Bat Boy. As a musical, it's great. I really loved it. It was my first time to Bat Boy. Absolutely balmy. It took me a while to get into it, but really a lot of fun. As a production, I think it needs a much better production. I think it needs a production that's actually a lot more ingenious and intuitive, and also one that actually, especially with sightlines, actually is aware of the venue it's playing in. So I'm not going to try and put anyone off going to Bat Boy, especially fans of the musical. It's still a good laugh. It's great to see. I think, you know, having just come into it, I do think like, why have I not seen this before? Why do I not really get to know this musical? Because it's so much fun. But just the production does let it down. So that's all I'm going to say. Feel free to give your own opinion and you know, discuss things with me if you feel that I've gone off the track a little. Who knows? Maybe after sleeping onto the bit, when I start my review tomorrow morning, I might have a slight change of heart. Doesn't usually happen. I find when I do these videos, what I say, it's just basically replicated in writing afterwards. But yeah, loved the musical. Loved Lauren Ward, Ron Compton, and Simon Bailey in it. It's a good, fun night out. If you're not as critical as me when it comes to production values, it's fine. Go see it. A real blast of a musical. Anyway, I shall leave you to your evenings. I've taken up now 12 minutes of your time of me gabbling on about my own opinion. But that's what I do. So I shall see you guys next time. Ta-ra! Why isn't this turning off?